Welcome to the Titans of Industry show, and today I have our third installment in our Bitcoin series. We started with the fundamentals with Adam Meister, we went in depth with Dave Scorsese, and now I am here with a person who's going to help us understand how can we take Bitcoin to the next level, how can we take it and move it into retirement. And I'm here with Mark Klein of Bitcoin IRA. How are you today?
I'm good. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks a lot.
Okay, listen, I want to get started with a rundown of what's going on right now in the Bitcoin space. Can you take us through the most, updated information and, what's going on right now?
Yeah, in general, right now, there's in the Bitcoin space, there's actually kind of a lot of difference of opinions happening, specifically around what's called a hard fork, which is a shift in the chain technology and what basically a difference between the core classic of what we've been on for Bitcoin since its inception and what is known as unlimited Bitcoin. And so that's kind of putting some downward pressure in the marketplace. There's you can see we're back below 1,000 after hitting all-time highs last month in February. And that coupled with the ETF disapproval, the first week of Lost Twins, the disapproval by the SEC for a Bitcoin ETF. So there's just a lot of where is Bitcoin headed next in the movement of mainstream adoption, and what will it look like for those users ahead? That's really at the pulse right now, what's happening, what people are talking about.
So you live and breathe Bitcoin every day. When did you get into this space?
This coming June will be the start of my third year in Bitcoin specifically.
Okay, so why Bitcoin, Mark? Why Bitcoin?
Well, one of the fundamental reasons for Bitcoin is kind of a dichotomy. The first is a lot of people see it as an investment, and the other is they see it as a means of survival, and that's happening right now in the world today. So as an investment vehicle that people are seeing Bitcoin at, there's two schools of thought. There's the short-term speculators that have seen the rise of about 120, 130% last year in 2016. It was the top performing asset for its class, and overall it outpaced pretty much everything on the docket. And then there's the long-term play that sees this as a disruptive technology. So just like what the internet did to communication or email did to the post office, many believe that Bitcoin will do the same to the monetary system in the banks. Those are the investment vehicle mentality. Now, there's also a school that utilizes Bitcoin as a means of survival, and that's really in the underbanked parts of the world or components of the world that are taking on hyperinflationary measures or deflationary devaluation of their currency. Right now, you see that people are surviving and have been for some time utilizing Bitcoin in Venezuela as they've had this currency crisis. When I was just down in Puerto Rico speaking at an event about Bitcoin, and somebody was brought up an interesting component of people that come from Vietnam and the Southeast Asian islands, and they work in the Caribbean at those different islands, and how they do their remittances back to their family. They send funds back, and doing it the standard way costs them almost 30 to 35% of their funds. Being able to move that streamlined with this disruptive technology of Bitcoin, they get to save that money and then inevitably have a better standard of living.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I've been to the Caribbean myself just last month, and we've talked with the locals about that exact thing. So when they send money back via Western Union, for example, they shave off so much from that initial salary that it's absolutely, it's like stealing. And Bitcoin does save them a lot of money, and honestly, it's faster to get the money across.
Yeah, when you don't have that infrastructure in place, it has a significant impact. Just take a look at Kenya. Their money is printed in such a poor fashion, and the humidity and the weather there in that country, that the standard cycle of a dollar or one of their piece of notes of currency is about 14 to 18 days. Here in the United States, this is about 14 to 18 months, and it's just because of the temperature and the production of that money. So when you can't really save and you don't have a banking system infrastructure in place, and your currency literally is falling apart faster than you can use it, it's a de facto to find something that's efficient like Bitcoin to be able to basically the means of survival and monetary exchange.
That's interesting. So I didn't know that the amount of time that the US dollar is in circulation is about a year and a half, before it erodes?
No, not that's it doesn't erode. That's how our Federal Reserve works. It is that then they take those back in. Those serial numbers get expired and new monies are printed. But in Kenya, the country Kenya, that's where it's within 14 to 18 days that it's starting to show signs of wear, and then you have problems with recognizability and can it be utilized? So it loses its utility because of its production and the amount of humidity in that region.
It just shows you the absurdity of the fiat monetary system, where the note is not noticeable. That's it. There's no value. Look, I wanna go forward on this, and you live and breathe Bitcoin every day. You sit in that office and you do you help people, and we'll get to that later. But I want to ask you, when you see a global map, how many cities, how many countries, how many businesses, and what type of businesses accept Bitcoin? I know Bill Gates is a huge Bitcoin proponent, and I know Microsoft has started to accept it, if I'm not mistaken. But can you tell us a little bit about how acceptable it is right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's break that apart to the cities, countries, and businesses, the three components. So let's start with cities. So right now, using third-party technologies like eGov and these online statements and ability to make payments, municipalities around our country in the United States are make it possible for you to pay parking tickets with Bitcoin, utility bills, things that you would normally pay to the state, tags on your driver's license or renewals or your license plate renewals. And right now, 60% of the states in the union have a city within them that is accepting Bitcoin in that fashion. This kind of was led on in the political government side with the Libertarian Political Party. The individual that ran from the Libertarian Party in last November's general election for president was accepting donations as Bitcoin. So that's kind of where you can see the municipalities digging in. Now, countrywide, let's take a step back and let's look at that globe. I would say that there's several favorable spots. The U.S. itself is actually one of the highest numbers of users and trading volumes in Bitcoin in the world. Many of Trump's administration is very pro-Bitcoin and blockchain technology utilization in the government. They see this rise of, as they call it, the efficiency of making America great again, and what they're presenting to us in their first 100 days. It can really benefit off of the efficiency and transparency of blockchain technology, smart contracts, keeping records, and really cut some of that pork and fat that we talk about from government programs, so they can exist but more efficiently and benefit more users and more taxpayers. Now, business-wise, so that's your government side and other countries around the world. The first Tesla was bought in Sweden, I believe, with Bitcoin. Was one of the largest transactions today in the Bitcoin space. Other than Estonia is a really weird, interesting one, and it's got a highest internet penetration in the world. So there's a lot of people in the digital space there. Beyond that, Denmark and other European countries that are very favorable for latitude of financial services, and that European Union mentality is where you see it. So then on the corporate side, as a user, it's like, okay, great, I only got so many bills I can pay to the government with Bitcoin. But business-wise, Overstock.com is one of the leading providers. The CEO was just at a major event in D.C. last week. You were right about Bill Gates is a huge proponent, and his company Microsoft accepts payments. Expedia is another one. As I mentioned, Tesla. For those of us that, I don't know if you use Mint.com to manage your finances and kind of combine accounts. There's a lot of offers like that, but Mint.com itself accepts Bitcoin for payments. So does Bloomberg and Home Depot. And even Dish Network. So there's a series of little restaurants. There's areas in San Francisco that is really just a cash-based area. People don't take credit cards or debit cards because of merchant services fees. Restaurants in that area will accept Bitcoin because it's easy use. So across the board, there's a lot of favorability towards it, and that's leading to more mainstream adoption.
It's very interesting. That's a very thorough analysis of this. I want to understand this. How do you get to see in your line of work, everything that you're saying? Where do you get this data from? Can you explain a little bit about what you're doing? What is Bitcoin in your IRA or in your 401k?
So Bitcoin within an IRA or 401k is the next step of mainstream adoption and new utilization that we brought to the table in June of last year. So our first account for putting Bitcoin directly inside of a retirement vehicle was with Ed Moy, the former director of the United States Mint. He's also our chief strategist here at Bitcoin IRA. And so what that means is people normally buy traditional with their 401k or IRA plans. They're inside of Fidelity, Edward Jones, or some house that sells dollar-denominated assets, so stocks, bonds, mutual funds, et cetera, that are based in the U.S. dollar. Or sometimes they get into some things where they're in Forex, but mostly ETFs otherwise, all derived from dollar-based assets. And there's a self-directed space out there where you can go into alternatives. And people have been going into hard physical assets like real estate, land, precious metals for some time in these accounts. We've helped many of them in that regard. And we found that putting a direct investment in Bitcoin fits that mold. It's an alternative asset that's decentralized money that isn't controlled or manipulated by the U.S. government, Federal Reserve, or otherwise, that also has a finite capacity to it. There's only 21 million of them that will ever be mined. Given those parameters, it's a common fit along with its utility for people to want to use it for a long-term investment vehicle. So they see it as, I'm going to put this money aside in a speculative fashion, this percentage of my portfolio, and see how Bitcoin performs over the next few years. And there's short-term and long-term. You're not stuck in it. It's not like an annuity contract. But that's really the mentality of people that are looking at this. Retirement planning is long-term. My daughter just turned 3. And I've set up a Roth IRA style for college savings plans with Bitcoin and silver inside of it for me looking from financial services and having only so much time to think about my own personal brokerage accounts. It made sense that in 18 years' time, those will probably be two assets that have done well for her. So that's really the mentality of using retirement funds for it. How it works is it's just like any of your other traditional accounts that you have out there, except for in this instance, you're directly investing in Bitcoin that will be in a wallet that you can be and denominated as a viewer of under the custodialship and security of the indicia of ownership of the IRA. So that gives you the tax deferred settings. You can use it in both Roth style and traditional style IRAs. 401ks would be rolled over into a self-directed IRA account in order to access Bitcoin. So you may have to do some changes in the account, but those are all things that are very easy to take care of for clients.
That's interesting. And how big is your business right now? How many people are aware of what's going on, of this option?
Right now, I think we just passed around our 250th account of just under about $7 to $10 million, I think, in funds that have been directly invested. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, having started a few other businesses, the velocity of this the adoption was at a far greater velocity than what we saw in prior investments like gold and silver. It's one that's been around for a while. I think that couples with the fact that it had a great year. And now we're seeing more and more people getting actively involved in understanding the concept. So there's some educational curve to this. We bring people towards videos or materials that help them understand kind of how is this a disruptive technology, and then how is it going to change money as I know it or as my family knows it in the future, and how does it fit into my 401k or IRA?
Okay, I want to ask you this. What is the problem or the disadvantage of Bitcoin? Where are the pitfalls? Obviously, as I understand from our previous guests, the main concern that people have is that the internet will fall. What would happen to your Bitcoin in that scenario? And tell me other concerns that people raise up to you.
So yeah, you've got a spectrum of concerns, just like with any other investment vehicle. If in a stock or bond or otherwise, will the municipality stay solvent? Will the company stay profitable? In Bitcoin, you have that same volatility as far as will this technology maintain its adoption rate? Will more and more people use it? Will become what we believe it to be as part of a fundamental component of the monetary system? Or is it somewhat of a fad? Is it something that won't hold and take bearing? Now, if I had a Bitcoin given to me for every time I saw mainstream media running the article that Bitcoin is dead or the end of Bitcoin as we know it, I'd have quite a bit of Bitcoin at this point. It's a resilient asset, so it's going to be tested. This is a currency. Remember, the U.S. dollar being unpinned from the gold standard in '71 through now. That's 44 years of a new era of currency that we've come to learn and deal with, and that's really the question mark, the big question mark concern. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, there is that doomsday mentality of okay, if we become hinged on this electronic society where you have this kind of cocoon of technology around our world, what happens when not maybe terrorism or other strikes with electronic pulses or otherwise, but you also have solar flare risks and those kinds of things that have been recorded in the 1850s, I think, that could have significant impact. So yeah, are those real risks? Absolutely. So the key word there, and my response most of the time, is diversity. Make sure that you're not putting all of your eggs into one basket. Just like you wouldn't put it all in the stock market at all-time highs expecting a correction, you wouldn't put all of your assets in something that's digital or technological. So physical gold and silver are a great complement to Bitcoin. We have a lot of clients that have started to build those hybrid accounts. In fact, Ed Moy, that's how his is designed. He has physical gold and silver of different types, as well as Bitcoin inside of his self-directed account. So in the event of those kinds of that kind of chaos that could occur short-term, mid-term, or long-term, you are prepared to take care of your means to survival, and the question mark is what will happen next. Now, technology inside of Bitcoin, the beauty of it being an open ledger, let's think about the democratization of this. Imagine the impacts that it would have on the banking system and otherwise, and what would come out of the tail end of it. Is it transparent where our zeros and ones really are? Is it transparent of how much is in the bank backed up, so that if there was a run on banks and people wanted to get to true fiat currency, not zeros and ones on a debit card, that would be pretty difficult. I have friends that have, we're out here in California and they'll go to Vegas for the weekend and they'll go to pull out cash because they want to work off cash while they're there. And sometimes they run into problems because the bank doesn't have that much at the bank. And that makes you kind of scratch your head a little bit. So those same risks occur as far as large major events like that, and diversification is what can help you. I mean, I have silver in my office desk right here. I've got a couple tubes of Silver Eagles, and I also have them at home in the safe at home, because you never really know what we're going to need and when we may need it.
How do you see Bitcoin in 5 to 10 years?
As a true believer in the concept of Bitcoin and its disruptive technology, I see it growing further and further into mass adoption. So right now, it's going to be going through a volatile area. There's with the concept of the ETFs trying to get to play. And I had a strong feeling about ETFs that they're kind of like putting gas in a Tesla. It doesn't quite make sense. We're trying to force this brand new decentralized revolutionary technology and monetary systems and put it into the old system. It doesn't quite make sense. But in 5 to 10 years, you have the chance for the evolution beyond that. And what I see is right now, imagine we have really a basket of fiat currencies, right? We've got Chinese yuan, we've got the yen, we've got the US dollar, the Canadian loonie, the euro, the pound sterling, all floating relative to each other in some fashion of balance of payments or geopolitical pressures between those countries. We have Brexit actually kicking in on March 29th. They're actually passing the law that they voted on, and it's gone through its processes. So there's going to be some real economic impact to that. What I see is a future where a basket of cryptocurrencies either augments, or if it happens to replace that basket of fiat currencies. There's a lot of weaknesses to what we've done to paper money. Let's think about how much money we've been printing here in the United States with QEs 1, 2, and 3 since the 2008 crash. We really injected ourselves back into recovery. So did the rest of the world. So to me, when you see these finite, transparent, decentralized currencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dash, and there's 160 ICOs that are coming out this year alone. I think the venture capital just announced its first token. Brock Pearson, his group at the Blockchain Foundation, put out some news yesterday about that. Those are those mainstream adoptions that could make cryptocurrency more valuable and prospective value and utility than something that the U.S. government or other central banks can just print at will. And who really pays is us savers. If you've got $50,000 in your savings account, every time they turn on the printing presses at the Federal Reserve, that's another tax on us. It's a hidden tax, but it's there, and that it kills the purchasing power. Something that's transparent, it's peer-to-peer, and it has a finite nature to it, like Bitcoin and these other tokens that are rising in popularity, may be something that has that utility, makes life a lot easier on us. There could be derivatives that are designed for certain things. Everybody has to pay a mortgage or rent. There could be a token for that, and that's a cryptocurrency that could come to fruition because of the basis of utility. I personally like the decentralization, and I like the transparency of it, because we're living on the edge of the longest amount of time a currency has not been backed by something physical or tangible like gold. 42 years is like the average life of a fiat currency, and I think the US dollar is about 45, 47 years years old without the pinging to the gold standard that Nixon took us off of in 71. So that's the big game for me, is that where we're going to head next. And sitting in rooms of Bitcoin experts, I wouldn't consider myself at that level of technological aptitude, but I get the mainstream adoption and what it can do to it. It's an exciting time, and it's going to be for quite a few many years ahead.
Chris, look, this was a great interview, and I want people to, if they choose to get more information about how to put Bitcoin in their IRAs or 401ks, and I went to your website. It has some great information. You're very responsive. Can you plug people in to how to reach out to you, how to reach out to your company, and perhaps do business with what you're doing?
Yeah, the fastest and most efficient way to get started is just to visit bitcoinira.com. There you can peruse through our resources. We've got a lot of great content from experts and writers on Bitcoin around the world, not just here in Sherman Oaks, California at our headquarters, but around the world, people bringing in economics majors, PhDs in economics that are contributing to that. So there's some amazing content if you really just want to start going down the rabbit hole a little bit and learn what's this whole thing about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency all about. And then if you want to learn more, you can put your information in, and one of our specialists will get back to you and with some additional materials that may fit your need for retirement and IRAs or other information about Bitcoin. Or you can always call us. We're here from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at 877-936-7175. Those are the two best ways to reach out to us, and we really just look forward to educating people on what this could do in the future and how it could be a great just sliver of diversification that you're looking for in your retirement planning.
Chris Klein, great interview. Thank you very much. We will touch base again.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on, and I look forward to seeing the series live here soon.
The digital currency sector keeps getting bigger and bigger by the day. The legitimacy of this industry is gaining traction and momentum, and though it's not for everyone, those who understand it sooner rather than later will be rewarded. See Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies that will come, and the entire blockchain technology as a whole is ultimate capitalism. It's built on supply and demand, plain and simple. Right now, Bitcoin is experiencing growth and growth pains, and it might split. Two groups are forming, Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Unlimited. Get our exclusive report on exactly what to do and a new cryptocurrency that might eclipse all others at wealthresearchgroup.com/Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin and the other legitimate cryptocurrencies are not only a means of exchange, but also a safe haven, since central banks are, according to Ray Dalio, running out of time and out of tools. It is wise and essential to allocate some of your portfolio into safe havens, as we wrote in a special report about a powerful combination of the ultimate safe havens at wealthresearchgroup.com/safe havens. If you're not aware yet, the word deep state is one of the top ranking words on Google Trends at the moment. And we've produced an important microdoc that's received over 230,000 views about the deep state and how they are attempting, using the low approval ratings of Donald Trump behind the scenes, to either overthrow him completely or discredit him enough so he will resign. Now, if a debt ceiling crisis does occur, we prepared a top action step-by-step plan at wealthresearchgroup.com/national debt. Join us in a few days as we have a great interview with some of the best anarcho-capitalists in the business, like Jeff Berwick. We just had an important interview with Jim Rickards where we talked about global economy. We had a 4-part series on Bitcoin. This is the 4th installment, and we had a 3-part series on marijuana legalization. I encourage you all to just study and become more savvy about what's going on right now, so you can build your life and your portfolio accordingly. And thank you for joining us. We'll have much more coming in the next weeks.